Well, howdy, folks. I'm called Beeman, and I'm continuing my art venture uh, by comparing different drawing implements that I happen to have laying around the house. First is the basic number 2 pencil, which I already used in my previous videos. So what I'm going to do to compare, this is like the baseline. So what I'm going to do to compare these different drawing implements is just draw a cube with each one. Okay, it's kind of a wonkadoo cube, but that's okay. And then I'm going to shade the face of it. See how I like drawing with each one. And at the end, we'll see which one I like the most. Because I've actually got a couple of options that just happen to be laying around the house. Some of them are old as butts, but they should still work, hopefully. We're going to find out either way. So that's a basic number 2 pencil. I kind of like how that works. And it's nice because they're so inexpensive. And the next one is actually an ancient mechanical pencil. This has been rattling around a junk drawer since I was in high school. This is a .7 lead. I should probably label these. Number 2. Ooh, my handwriting's bad. I spend a lot of time typing. I don't really spend a lot of time writing. But anyways, and this one's going to be .7. Let's just go mech for mechanical pencil. Ooh, alrighty, it's much sharper on the paper. So I get much, I don't know, it's almost like it's trying to dig into the paper a little bit. I didn't expect it to be that much of a difference, like that noticeable. It kind of softens up as you wear it down, but okay, it's a little bit small for my cube, but yeah, I think because it's so sharp. Oh no, it's kind of it's kind of weird because it starts out really sharp and then it starts to flatten out a little bit, but it never gets as flat as the regular number 2 pencil did. So that's the mechanical pencil. I actually have another mechanical pencil. This one's slightly fancier. I think this is called a drafting pencil, but this I got for well, I was going to use it to draw leatherworking patterns, but I'm not very good at drawing, so I don't really do that too much, to be honest. This is a .5 millimeter lead, and coincidentally, when I was in school, all the way through the 90s and into the early 2000s, I had a really hard time using regular pencils. Like this sound, it probably doesn't pick up on my microphone here, but the scratching sound of the pencil hitting the paper, I don't know, it was like nails on a chalkboard. It scrambled my brains a little bit. I couldn't handle it. So most of the time when I was in school, I'd use a pen. But at some point, I discovered that I could use mechanical pencils to write with, but I had to have a .5 lead. I couldn't use a .7. It was just barely too thick, so I got that scratchy effect. But the .5 millimeter leads, I was always able to write with. So I don't know what that's about. That's just like a weird abstract personal problem, but let's see how this goes, how I feel about it today. You know, weirdly enough, this actually feels softer on the paper than the .7. I don't know how that works. I don't know how that makes sense. But it doesn't feel like it's trying to dig into the paper as much. Maybe it's a softer graphite? I don't know. I don't know. But I feel like the shading is going to be even worse than the 0.7. Oh yeah, it's like all I can make is really dark marks. Let's see, maybe if I can extend the lid out a little bit. Maybe I can get it to flatten out. It kind of works. Let's see here. See, but now I'm hitting the metal. So I gotta extend it out a little more. Try to get it on the same flat spot. I don't know, I think for just writing, I like the 0.5 more, but for the drawing and shading, I think the regular pencil is just where it's at, man. Because you can kind of flatten this out, go, and you get much broader strokes. It's almost like a paintbrush, but it's, you know, graphite. So that's I would say of my 3 pencil options that I have today, the bog standard number 2 pencil is probably my favorite so far. And that's good because they're super cheap. I happen to have these things laying around all over the place. They just kind of collect over the years. And it's nice that that's the easiest one to use. Next up, another ancient, a relic from ancient B-Man past, is a basic ballpoint pen. Let's cut the page in half here. Okay, first off, it's not writing. Great. Minus points for the ballpoint. So let's go, well, I guess we're just doing a cube, so. I really like the way, like this is nostalgic, man. I like the way this kind of, let's do our cubes the opposite direction. The ballpoint pen immediately, it just glides across the paper. Oh, oof. Okay. That's, we'll just imagine that line didn't happen. And now we'll try to, yeah, I think this is going to be where the ballpoint fails. Can't really fill in a large area. With the ballpoint pen. And you can't really, so that was the cool thing about the pencil is you can go in different directions and it just kind of blends together, but with the ballpoint, you could see it getting all scratchety. Yeah, this is not great. I'll just stop there. I would say it's not bad for doing lines, but for filling in areas, this is definitely not the move. This is just bad. I'm guessing my next option is going to be the same. My next option is a slightly fancier gel pen. Oh, I didn't label this. Ballpoint. Ooh. This, immediately after writing that, it feels kind of, honestly, it's kind of like a cross between the 0.7 and this. It kind of glides across the paper, but it also kind of tries to dig in a little bit. But immediately, I can tell this has much better ink flow than this. It's like the ink is thinner. so it just rolls out of the pen easier. I don't know the mechanics behind that, but I like it. For shading, I expect this will be the same. That's a little bit better than the ballpoint, actually. It's kind of blending together a little bit. Now, how does it look when I do some vertical lines and some horizontal lines together? Yeah, it kind of blends them together a little bit. It's not terrible. But I gotta wonder, is all this ink bleeding through the back of the page? Because it does feel thinner, and it is making the paper warp a little bit. It's getting the paper a little bit wet. I'll check that out in a minute. So that's a gel pen. I kind of like the way it glides across the paper, although it doesn't feel as smooth as the bog standard super cheap ballpoint pen, but it does fill in shaded areas a little bit better. And now the next option, I saw a video recently where somebody was using, not this specifically, but something, if I can get it open, basically like this. It's a Sharpie Ultrafine marker. I got these for leatherworking. I use these to mark the leather for cut lines. But let's see how this goes. Why is it every time I go to put the pen to the paper, I always hesitate, like the image of what I was about to draw just floods out of my brain, even though I'm just drawing little cubes. Okay. I thought this would be more scratchy. Because that was another thing. I could never use markers because the felt tip scratching across the paper, it did that same scramble my brain situation. But this actually is not really doing that much. So I'm a little surprised by that. Let's see how it fills in. Okay. Filling it in, it's starting to dry out the felt tip. That's not great. All right, I'm just going to stop there. So Sharpie Ultrafine, similar to the ballpoint, they are terrible at filling in areas. Now I got one more Sharpie to try, just a regular old fatty Sharpie. I also use these in leatherworking, but I mostly just use them to mark stuff out, actually. Let's do this one first. Fine Sharpie. It's not bad for writing. I wouldn't say it's my favorite option for writing, but it did okay. Like, it felt okay. So let's just do this over here. Fat. Oop. Fat Sharpie. That feels a little weird. All right, I suspect this will be much better than the Ultrafine for shading in an area. But will it be much better? I don't know. I can already feel the felt tip starting to dry out a little bit. But you know what? It's still going. It's still trucking along. Let's just do it this way. I don't know. I feel like for me and my my novice level art venture, I'm probably going to stick with the pencil for a while. Not really a big fan of these. I mean, the ballpoint's not bad for doing lines. Like, these ones aren't bad for doing lines. But I should probably figure out how to shade stuff in, you think? I mean, I know I'd kind of, my shading video turned out kind of butt mode, but okay. So, I would say that filled in much better than this. This was not doing great. This was almost as bad as the, actually this was worse than the ballpoint, I would say, for shading in or filling in an area. This was pretty good. It's a little bit streaky. I don't know if that picks up on the camera or not. But the Fat Sharpie was better for filling in areas. The gel pen, I think, is a good mix of both. The gel pen, it kind of lays down ink well enough to fill in areas, but it also does the lines pretty good. Yeah, it feels pretty good to, I don't know. Let's see. Oh, this just feels like butter going across the paper. I don't know if that's just a weird nostalgia thing or if it's like genuinely better. I mean, this is not a expensive ballpoint. This is just these come in packs of like, I don't know, 15, 20 of them for like $5. Well, it's been a couple of years since I had to buy any pens. I mostly do typing these days, but then over here, see the 0.5. Oh. Break the graphite. That was always a downside with the 0.5s, was that I tend to write kind of heavy and you break the graphite pretty easy in these things. You know what? What about this one? You know, I'm not sure how I feel about the pencils, to be honest. I know I like the pencils more than I like the inks so far, but I do have one more thing to test. Ooh, look at that bleed through. The ballpoint didn't really bleed through at all. This kind of bled through a bit. But this is just printer paper. As far as I'm aware, printer paper is only 20-pound weight, so it's not super great. But I have one more thing to test, and this is more of a joke than anything, but I have a giant graphite rod. Oh, look at this big mamma jamma. This, my dad picked up at work when I was a teenager, and it's been rattling around the garage ever since. And I just happened to find it recently, and I thought, hey, let's try drawing with the thing. Pretty sure me and my sister tried drawing with it when we was teenagers. Well, she probably did. I don't know if I ever did, but that's why this end is kind of blunted and this end is still kind of sharp. So let's see how this goes. Wah, wah. The lines are super faded for some reason. Not a fan of that. It's also kind of difficult to get a precise, because it's not a sharp point, you know. It's difficult to get exactly your line exactly where you want it to be. Oof. Well, it definitely feels like just graphite. I feel like a little kid holding like a giant marker, you know. Getting some weird scratchy lines over here. Must be like a dirty spot on the surface. I don't know. All right. There we go. Big giant graphite rod. Look at you go. All right. That actually turned out okay. It's just the lines are a little faded and it's not exactly precise. But if I was to file this down with, I don't know, what the heck do you use to file graphite? I mean, a pencil sharpener is just like a little steel blade, right? Maybe I could whittle this down with a pocket knife to a point and get it to where I could draw something more consistently. Rawr. It's also kind of difficult to get dark lines, especially dark lines with this thing. Okay, back to business. Put that thing aside. I would say of the ink options, my favorite for doing just lines is probably the ballpoint. The gel pen comes in a pretty close second. I feel like it's simultaneously feels like it's scratching the paper a little bit more, but it also feels like because the ink is so much thinner, it glides quicker. So I don't know, it's a non-optimal mix for me personally. The fine liner was surprisingly okay to do lines with. It's just you get this weird thing where like the tip starts to dry out and then your line gets all fadey. Not a huge fan of that. How does the fat Sharpie work for doing? I was just right on myself. Great. Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of the fat Sharpie. For anything really. I mean, it fills in areas nicer, but I think I'll just stick with pencil for now, and I'll go between. I mean, I still have a bunch of leads for these, so I'll probably use these sometimes. But I think mostly I'm just going to use this basic pencil because they're so cheap. You can easily sharpen them again, or you get a good flat spot going on them. Just do a little of this for a bit, and you get a good flat spot going on it. And you could do much lighter. It's almost like a gradient. And then doing lines, it's just, I don't know, I think this is the best. This is probably the best option that I have right now available to me. And I'm broke, so I can't go buying art supplies anytime soon. But hopefully, this will serve as, I don't know, useful information for anybody who happens to have a bunch of pens and pencils writing around. Just get what you have, get a piece of paper, and see what you like using. See what feels good. See what feels best to you, because it's all personal preference, right? And yeah, I think that's going to be it for now. So, well, before I stop recording here, let me say that the basic pencil one for the graphite options, it's probably the best for doing just lines, and it's the best for filling in areas. It's also the cheapest. Whoop, Butterfingers. It's also the cheapest, most versatile, most readily available. And for this, for ink, right now, I'm going to say I have this weird personal fascination with the way the ballpoint glides across the paper. But I think factually the gel pen is probably actually better. Yeah, I don't know. I just have a weird personal preference for this because of nostalgia. So I would say these two are probably it for me. I'm not really a big fan of the fine liner, and I'm not really a fan of the fatty Sharpie. So yeah, those are my winners. Basic pencil takes the crown, and these two kind of fight for second place. So that's it for now. See you later.